Hey, thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm Meteorologist Chris Bianchi, and it's that time of year, right? We're getting into the beginning of fall, which means we're starting to think about when our first frost and freeze might be, and when you should blow out those sprinklers, winterize your home, things like that, right? So for us here along the Front Range, I'm going to get into some of those details about what you should know, when probably a good idea to get those sprinklers blown out, that sort of thing. We're going to walk you through that, take a look back at recent years, and walk you through the gamut a little bit. But let's start things off by taking a look at our average first freeze date in Denver. That would be on October the 7th. The latest on record, you can see it there on the top right-hand side of your screen. That was actually back in 1944 when we waited all the way until November the 15th for our latest first freeze. So when we're talking about temperatures, again, dropping down to low 30s, and keep in mind, we're talking about temperatures between about 33 and 36. That is generally speaking considered to be a frost, where you could get some tender vegetation that's affected. 32 or below, that's a freeze. That is the potential for damaging. That is usually season-killing kind of freeze. If it drops down to right at 32, usually you're all right. But it's when we get, down to the hard freeze territory, which is below 28 degrees, that's when the growing season effectively comes to a close, and we could be looking at that here over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, coming up on October the 7th, that's our average first freeze date. I will say as well, I'm going to get into the forecast here as well a little bit. We have nothing resembling a frost or a freeze before the end of the month, the end of September, and into the first few days of October. So it looks generally okay. So our first freeze dates, these are the last 5 years. Now, you might remember, of course, 2020 was a really weird year. That's when we had that wonky 101 degree day back on September the 5th, and then 3 days later it snowed. That was that really weird year. But notice that each of those other years in the last 5 years have been later than October the 7th. And what we've noticed in recent years, particularly over the last 20 years, is that we're seeing that average first freeze more in the October 12th, 13th range rather than October the 7th. So it's pretty common for us now to wait into the second or even third week of the month of October. And there is believed to be some influence from a warming climate from this. I'm not going to get into much detail about that. That's not the focus of this. But it's the month of fall where we here in Colorado have, over the last 20, 30 years, really noticed the impacts of a warming climate. We've seen a drier, warmer stretch here in the fall months, September, October, November in particular, and you can see that play out here on those first freeze dates. Again, we're now talking usually, even though our average long-term date, October the 7th, you can tell 2020 obviously is way before that, 2021, 2022, even right around October 7th, no huge difference there, but generally speaking, we're seeing more of those second, even third week of October first freezes in the last 20, 30 years. And again, we do think that there's some influence from a warming climate on that. It's hard to gauge that one spot, fairly short amount of data, but again, there's generally some data that leads towards that. Now, with fall coming, average first are 32 or lower. Only 11 days after that is our average first measurable snowfall. Our average first measurable snowfall date is on October the 18th. That's just 11 days, of course, after October the 7th. Earliest measurable snowfall date, that was already weeks ago, back on September the 3rd. That was back in 1961 when it snowed about 4 inches in Denver. That's another story for another day. But our average first snow is October the 18th. So the point being, if you are thinking about blowing out the sprinklers or winterizing your home, you've probably got a couple weeks, ways to go, because we also look at that 7-day forecast. I'll say this, we're recording this on September the 21st, on Thursday, September the 21st. I'm going to get into some more specifics beyond that. You might be watching this into the last week of the month of September. Folks, look at that forecast. Look at those overnight lows. We're not even looking at anything close to those 30s, those low, even mid-30s that we look for. We got nothing even resembling a 40-degree temperature anytime soon. The lowest I can go maybe would be the mid-40s for us, and that trend continues. It looks like, again, the computer forecast models at this point, they're pretty reliable once we start talking about a forecast is calm. It looks like as we get into the beginning of October, first, second, third days of October, it looks like we're going to be very comfortably okay in terms of no frost or freeze concerns. So, kind of the round things on out as you start thinking about when to winterize your home, when to blow out your sprinklers. I think if you wait until the first few days of the month of October, and just keep an eye on the forecast. This can always change. It's Colorado. I don't have to tell you our weather's a little bit weird here. But if you wait into the second week of the month of October, you should be fine. And it's worth noting when we're talking about those winterizing your home, and specifically, again, thinking about the date to blow out your sprinklers, things of that sort, it drops down briefly to 32 degrees or even down to 31 for an hour or two. That's most likely not going to cause any significant damage. It's once we start getting down to those hard freeze, again, upper 20s, that's when we really start looking at that potential for some of those significant freeze concerns. Of course, when it comes to vegetation, things like that killing frost, sometimes it depends. Obviously, I'm not a huge gardener. I'm not a green thumb. My wife is, but that's a separate story. When you get down to 35, 36 degrees, that's when it could potentially lead to a killing frost or some issues of that sort. So just keep in mind that over the next few weeks, obviously we're getting to October, this is the time of year to expect it, but just might want to brush up now on when those dates might be for specific plants, because we could be looking at that here over the next few weeks. That said, again, when you're talking about winterization, you should be okay at least until the second week of October. And you know what? I'll say this as well. If you wait till the third week of October, you're probably all right as well. So, getting into the middle of the month, overall, it looks like we're, in terms of the near-term forecast, in terms of climatology, especially climatology of late, it looks like we're going to be okay for a little bit longer. So again, in terms of those preps for winterizing your home, things of that sort, you're okay until probably the second or third week of the month of October. And hopefully this gives you a good idea about what to expect as we head into the winter season and what to look forward to. So hopefully, again, that gives you a good idea about what to expect. Once again, I'm 90s meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks for joining us here on 90s Plus.